Thank you. So the talk that what I'm going to be talking about is cultivating voluntary relationships. And the way that I think about that is not necessarily just like looking for volunteers to come out to programs, but actually every part of your life. Like, what is voluntary and what isn't, right? So like, we're all here having a voluntary relationship with each other, sitting in the same room because we all wanted to be here. And the importance of cultivating those sorts of relationships over the ones that require force and domination are critical to, I think, everything that we're talking about here. So it wasn't until probably like 2 weeks ago that I found out about this through a Facebook invite thing. And so I reached out to the organizers, and they wrote back. I had initially just asked if we could come out and set up a little table or something like that. And they wrote back and said that maybe we could speak too. So I said sure, and the team wrote right back and said, all right, we have a spot for you. And one of the things that we do at Wild Earth Farm and Sanctuary is try to have more conversations rather than presentations or speaking events. So like a lot of the times that we've presented, we've actually sat around with people and just talked about the issues and what people thought and came up with solutions. So I wrote something that I'm just going to read because I'm going to be able to present it in a better way than trying to. I didn't memorize it, so I'm going to just put it out there like this. So for those who haven't met me yet, my name is Joe Kilcoyne. I'm one of two founders of Wild Earth Farm and Sanctuary. I split my time between Chicago and Wild Earth. In Chicago, I still work a day job, and I'm basically pushing funds towards this project through that until I can actually just step away from it and move into this full time. So 2 years ago, my dear friend Heather Patrick and I finished the process of making a purchase of 200 acres in the foothills of Appalachia in eastern Kentucky. It was an event that we had saved and planned for over the previous 5 years. Heather heads up Wild Earth Sanctuary, a nonprofit farm animal sanctuary, and I, Wild Earth Farm, LLC. Together we have Wild Earth Farm and Sanctuary and are able to build the project from two angles. One, a nonprofit vegan animal sanctuary that focuses on animal rescue and care based on a permaculture farm. A business which will help drive funds to the project as a whole through different means. I have been involved with the animal liberation movement for about 18 years. I went vegan 16 years ago and I've never looked back. I was involved with other social justice issues before that and have been an anarchist for a bit longer than that, to just give a small base for what I'm about to say. Everyone in this room has a piece to the puzzle of figuring our way out of the mess we see all over the world. Some of us may know more about solar power, some may know more about growing fruit and nuts, and some may know more about nonviolent communication and building community. The point is that we all have the answers that when combined can get us there. I truly believe that we have the power as individuals and as communities to walk away from the systems of dominance that destroy us. 3 principles in permaculture being people care, earth care, and fair share, or return a surplus. And I think that these nail it. And I think that my interpretation is that non-human animal care fits well into any of these principles. I'd ask anyone to show me where slaughterhouses, clear-cuts, genocide, war, hatred, divisiveness over religion, government, factory farms, prisons, and fear-mongering fit in. Does domination and alteration of other species, whether plant or animal, fit in here? How about locking animals up, forcefully taking the functions of their bodies, and then finally their body itself? How do anything but voluntary relationships fit into a peaceful future? How can force ever be something we accept if we are to free ourselves from these histories? Whether we are talking about the killing of an animal who does not want to die, a monocrop of soy that gets tilled over and over, or any function of government, as all of them rest completely on force. Isn't engaging in any of these the opposite of where we know we can go when we dream of futures of abundance, resilience, and community? Aren't they all right there in our reach? Maybe removing our resources from this equation and placing them with our dreams and investing in our dreams is necessary for a shift to happen. Building these systems of abundance with gardens, forests, schools, shelters, communities will ease the fear of stepping away from a system that has created dependence. But maybe, just maybe, as we create more and more of these alternatives, we will stop trading government-controlled clinics, schools, food systems, and libraries for prisons, war, drone strikes, destroyed currencies, death, fear, and the votes that perpetuate this system into a continuous loop. Also, if we create enough of these networks, there may be no need to fight what seems to be a losing battle. By simultaneously starving them of our resources, removing ourselves from relationships based on force, we are creating more networks with our resources, whether financial or social. By building projects that feed people with food and ideas based on barter and community, an abundance of resources becomes available. What if the amount of fear that is based just around resources were dramatically reduced? Don't racism and nationalism play off that fear all the time? We don't need to be afraid. We have many answers just within this room to build happiness and help people also not be afraid and have confidence in themselves and our communities. Terence McKenna once said, "The idea is to not confront bad ideas, but to come up with good ideas. Otherwise, your enemies define the game and you are the loyal opposition." And how many years have we been the loyal opposition? And hasn't it been an unsatisfying experience? We would be happier people, and this would be a better world if we spent more time bringing that out, rather than opposing someone else's vision of what is happening. The I Ching says at one point that if evil is directly confronted in name, it perfects weapons to defend itself. Now, I don't know if ever confronting bad ideas would be the right path, but I certainly spent a lot of time doing that when I was an activist. But I do know that if no one is coming up with good ideas, we don't have answers to point to when people say how. Finding common ground with people who may not initially think there is imperative. This past November at Wild Earth, we planted approximately 40 nut and fruit trees, and our neighbor planted another 40. We also shared them with other neighbors, family, and friends. They spread joy from the planting parties to the simple act of giving them. These trees will grow up to produce food crops year after year, build the soil around them, provide habitat for amazing amounts of life, and for me be a symbol of the community of family and friends that came together to help plant them. The importance of getting seeds, shrubs, and trees into the ground as perennial sources of food, fiber, and fuel must not be underplayed as a viable and necessary alternative to animal agriculture and plant-based factory farms. When we see fields of soy, corn, and wheat, recognizing them also as factory farms is critical to see why a transition to a vegan diet alone is not enough. Looking at foods and methods of growing these foods in ways that regenerate soil instead of degrade it is vital to both the cause of animal liberation and food sovereignty. Around the farmhouse, we are transitioning the lawn into gardens and homes for the rescued animals. Currently, ducks and pigs have already made their forever homes at Wild Earth, where they spend their days enjoying the sun, eating and pooping and being themselves. They cycle nutrients through their digestive process and leave manure behind, which helps build the soil, which will in turn help the gardens and forests grow nutritious food for them, the other animals rescued, and ourselves. We also cycle our own human manure through composting toilets, doing everything we can to allow nutrients to stay local and regenerate the land and thus ourselves and our communities. This past summer at Wild Earth, we hosted an all-vegan permaculture design course with Graham Burnett, author of the Vegan Book of Permaculture, along with William Faith of Genius Loci Permaculture. We had students come from many different locations, and overwhelming sentiment was yes, vegan permaculture. We spent 12 days teaching and learning the methods of building food forests, swales, sheet mulching, community building, nonviolent communication, veganic gardening methods, composting, planting, soil regeneration, eating delicious vegan meals, sharing stories, songs, and going on foraging hikes, just to name a few. And now we currently have on the schedule for next year another vegan permaculture design course, also with Graham and William. We will also be hosting Mark Shepard in his Restoration Agriculture class, our first alumni gathering festival, which will feature past students presenting small workshop blocks based on their interests and specialties, along with everyone bringing harvested foods from their own projects so that we can all cook them together around the fire. And also a 2-day mushroom cultivation class. It will be a busy year, but only the beginning of what is to come. So a few years back, I took a permaculture design course with the folks at Midwest Permaculture in Stell, Illinois. Bill and Becky Wilson. The class was a mixed bag of folks with different backgrounds and experiences, and at night I would often stay up in the classroom chatting with other students. One of the students and I took an interest with each other and would often talk about the ideas we had for designs in our own homes. We would talk about our past and yearning for adventure, companionship, and something different. She took a genuine interest and expressed sincere hope in me accomplishing the project I was helping to build. She also told me that she used to be a dairy farmer. Something those who hear me talk about animal liberation issues will have heard me say that if I were pressed for an answer to one of those impossible what-if questions, that I would choose to consume meat again before I would dairy. Which is usually the opposite, right? Like people will go vegetarian and then vegan. It's my impossible answer to a silly question, but the issues with dairy require domination and subjugation. You can't just assume a voluntary giving from an animal that has produced the substance for her babies. You can't assume that with meat either, but you at least have the possibility, even if rarely the case, in wild animals living out their life to the last moment. Dairy can never accommodate even that small hope that an animal will live wild. But these moments in class taught me some things. We both believed in a better future. So I could have dismissed someone with a different past than mine, or we could have learned about each other to find compassion. Now maybe some would say that an aggressive attitude towards someone may be the response, but I feel deep inside that compassion may be the only way to break the cycle of resentment towards each other, which can in turn be used to find peace. I think permaculture and veganism, when teamed up, can be a positive attitude about the future. It has been an amazing experience to be here with everybody, everyone with so many passionate and knowledgeable experiences, and people who are turning dreams into realities. And to each of you, thank you.
Thank you so much, Joe. Just stay here 2 seconds. We'll do if there's any, 1 or 2 clarification questions, and if not, if you have more of an in-depth question, we can address that later. Is there? No? Oh, you did?
Are you still accepting summer applications for the coming veganic?
Yes, yep.
Yes.
Yep. Actually, the registration hasn't been open yet, but we just
Oh,
solidified all the dates, so it
Cool.
starts October 1st next year.
October 1st?
October 1st.
Kentucky, right?
In Kentucky.
And I'm
One
not sure.
more.
I'm not sure if this is clarification. Maybe it needs
Then
more
it's-
expounding.
Then it probably isn't. If you're not sure. Okay, is it okay to wait later?
Sure.
Okay, cool. Excellent. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, so our next speaker is Eugene Cook. Those of you who were here yesterday already heard him speak yesterday because he also was part of the session on, building food justice and food sovereignty in our cities and communities. Eugene Cook,
Can I get on there?
yes, so I'll introduce you and then we'll just figure out the laptop situation.
Cool.
Okay, so Eugene Cook lives in Atlanta. He is an urban farmer, I guess you would say, right?
Sure.
Yeah, you're an urban farmer in Atlanta. He has a business there that transforms vacant lots into, veganic gardens, fruit, plants fruit trees, that sort of thing. And he's also worked a lot outside of Atlanta. He goes to Kenya, Jamaica, other cities in the US and helps people get those sorts of projects started. Yeah, I guess that's about all I'll say. Let's just figure out the...
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
If you can
So,
figure
thank
that
you.
part, and then I'll just type something in. You just need to go to Vimeo. If we can get that.
Oh,
All right, y'all. How y'all doing today?
Good.
Good. There's some different folks and different faces. Thank you for what you did. It's amazing what you offered. And Brother Joe, amazing. So because there's been such a kind of broad scope of information, perfect, this is going to be good. And then when you get there, maybe you can just type in native planting. So I am
Important
growing.
security message. Please call the number provided as soon as possible. You will be guided for the removal of the...
Vimeo.com.
Iqbal, are you still connected?
Maybe that one was going on.
Yeah, she's stuck. It looks like she's there. So I do grow in urban areas. I am actually a native of California. I grew up in Southern California, started growing food at Crenshaw High School. This is a book that I wrote. It's called Grow Where You Are, and it can be found on our website, growwhereyouare.farm. You can download it for like $10. But the important thing is that when the way all of this stuff happened for me is probably a little bit different than other people, because I'm growing up in Southern California. I'm working in South Central LA. And I come from my maternal grandparents were farmers. And I would visit them in Kansas every 3 or 4 years. But then I would come back, ride my skateboard, and do graffiti, and eat Snickers, and all that kind of stuff. And that part, you might have to ask Shema about. And so I started growing food because I became a father. And once I became a father, I was living in Pomona, and I went in the backyard before the child was born, but I knew that it was coming. I just started planting food because I had learned that process, and it just kicked back in. And so once I started planting the food and the food started coming out, we were in a group of people who were in our birthing class, and they came over to the house and they saw a butternut squash hanging from the fence and all kinds of stuff, and they said, you should teach us how native planting mounds, native planting mounds. And they said, you should teach people how to grow food. And I was like, I can't teach people how to grow food because I don't know anything about it. They said, but you know more than we do. So for all of us, like Joe said, we all have answers. So for all of us who are, who know a little bit, you know probably a lot more than somebody else when it comes to whatever that thing is. And so I encourage you to continue to share it and teach it, because the more you teach, the more you learn. So I started teaching people the teeny little bit that I knew, and then I got in. Oh, okay. Hello, Nicole. They want me to be able to let you to be able to hear me. So before I go too deep into it, I want to show you a video so that you can see what I create, so that when I'm standing here, you just can decide whether you actually want to listen or not, based on the work. So everything for me is based on the work. I hope this is going to get bigger and do all that thing. All right, cool. Brother, can you help me? Yeah, I got you. So this is in Atlanta. It's the Good Shepherd Agroecology Center, and it's in Southwest Atlanta. Anybody ever been to Atlanta?
Yeah.
All right, good. So Southwest Atlanta is the part of town. Atlanta is a very segregated city, so it's the part of town where all of the black people live. And we grow the food, and it goes up to Buckhead, to some of the finest restaurants. And this is one of the spaces where we grow. It's behind Good Shepherd Community Church. It should only be a couple minutes, and you can see what we're doing. Good?
Ready?
Yes, thank you, sir.
Should we wait a couple seconds so it loads? It looks like it's kind of,
Oh, I don't
don't
know.
want to freeze it
Okay.
midway.
Either way, I don't know. Just try it.
All right.
Yeah, it's loading. Perfect.
All right, Georgia Organics. Yay.
Welcome. You are here with Eugene Cook at the Good Shepherd Agroecology Center here in Southwest Atlanta, Georgia. And today we'll be talking about native planting mounds, also known as hugelkultur beds. This is a very wet site, and what we've noticed is that the water is coming from both underground and from above ground in this floodplain. So we were using the mounds to raise the plants up off the ground out of that water and allow their root system to absorb water without sitting in the water. The benefit of these native planting mounds is that we mound up organic material surrounded by a skeleton of wood, and that allows for the soil to continually break down. So it's like a living compost pile that we are planting our food in. And there's also room to plant fruit trees, melons, potatoes, and any kind of binding fruits. These are actually, it's a native and indigenous planting technique that has been used all through Africa and North America. The indigenous people here continually gathered up all their organic matter in the tradition that there is no waste. The ingredients that you need for creating these native mounds for yourself are using the organic matter that is native to your area. Here in Southwest Atlanta, Georgia, we have large trees. We want to start the center of the mound with the largest pieces of material, hardwoods, tree stumps, the clays, and then we're going to cover that with brush, twigs, a layer of compost, native soil that has been dug out from underneath, and then the fine planting mix on top. And what we know about raised surfaces like this is that we can plant 3 times more produce by being able to plant all along the sides, over the top, and down the other side. Nice, look at that. What? That's a mound right there. You see that? Do you see that? It can happen in one afternoon. If you have 4 people and plenty of material, you're done in an afternoon. Once we have created our native planting mound by organizing all the material in its proper order, we advise that the mound is then wet down thoroughly to allow for the water to be the charging agent, and then to sit for 1 full moon cycle before we plant in it. The moon cycle would be from new moon to new moon, or from full moon to full moon, and we suggest planting on the full moon. And we'll plant everything from tall, vertical herbs like garlic at the top of the mound, and then root crops like potatoes in the center of the mound, and then along the bottom we can do things like legumes, bean crops at the bottom, which will grab all that water and also add nitrogen into the mound. The maintenance required on these native planting mounds is minimal. The thing to remember is to make sure that we are building them with hardwoods and not pine because of the acid content. And then at the end of each year, or each season for that matter, we dig along the side of the bed and throw whatever soil has slid down by gravity and erosion right back onto the top of the pile. These native planting mounds have saved us here on this very, very wet soil. We have used the organic matter that is native to this area to create these mounds, been able to plant abundant food, reaped a wonderful harvest, and we hope what you have seen is helpful for you and you can use it in your area.
And the USDA helped.
Huh?
And the USDA helped.
Yeah, they helped make the video.
I'm still impressed.
Yeah, and that's good. The reason, well, I don't know how to, there we go. So the reason why I did that was just to show you just a bit of one of the sites that we have, and then also to bring in some of the other concepts. So for us in urban areas, we have, I'm hearing that thing, maybe I'm too close to it. I'm in the middle of it. So in urban areas, a lot of the main issues that we find as urban farmers is access to land, right? Access to land, and then figuring out how you're going to generate enough resources to continue to invest in that property, but also to continue to pay your livelihood while you're living inside of an urban area. And so there's a couple things that we have to address as urban farmers, especially as people of color that are doing this. It's often that I'm invited to spaces like this where I'm going to be the only black man standing up in front of you talking about doing agriculture, which in this country, considering how this country was built, considering what attracts all of y'all to this country, it's really ironic, right? And yesterday I voiced the sentiment that was really similar to Joe, but from the place where I speak, which is like, if you're constantly coming into confrontation with whatever issue it is that you have, then it's generating a lot of, it's using and generating a lot of aggressive energy, right? And if we can be creative and create new spaces and create beautiful spaces, it's a totally different energy. It's a totally different motion, a totally different movement. But in saying that, there was another brother who was here that was really clear that he felt that we needed to have those kinds of confrontations. And there's a space for all of it. But what I know for sure is that in this country, and in this city, for example, the people who are being shot dead in the street don't look like you or you or you. They look exactly like me. Exactly. So when I'm saying to a group of y'all who are activists or who are doing things that are confrontational, that I am choosing as a father and as a husband to move into a creative space and find wherever I can to create beauty and abundance, it's because I already know that the men that are being killed in all the streets throughout America are not even activists. They just happen to be the descendants of the only group of people who never wanted to come here. So, I have indigenous blood, I have African blood. I find myself here in the United States, and I find myself on land, and the land is valuable. Brother Antonio ended yesterday by saying this is an issue about how we value labor and how we value land. The birth of the United States of America is on those two issues. So the fact that we've now come full circle to where we're in a room where we're discussing how you value labor and how you value land. And I'm standing here as a representative of a group that created the structure for any of these conversations to even happen. And I'm saying, avoid the conflict and be creative. I'm saying that because I've been abused without ever, I've never demonstrated or protested anything ever. And I've already been abused and locked up by the police. Do you understand what I mean? So I'm speaking from my position. And if you choose to be an activist and if you choose to confront things, that's on you. And that's okay. But I'm coming from a very specific position here. You know? The choice to be able to activate and do these kinds of protests is because a huge population of people who never wanted to be here paved the street that you're going to go protest down. Build the city hall that you're going to stand in front of and protest. You understand what I'm saying? So as a grower, one of the most valuable things that I've seen is to offer whatever it is that we know to anybody who will listen. So I started with that video because that video gives you an example of some of the things that we've done, but hopefully is actually instructional. We do veganic agriculture because we have found that for anybody to be able to calm themselves in the face of the kind of combat that we find and the aggression that we find in this time period, meditation is key. And in any tradition of meditation that you study, one of the very first things is to eliminate the consumption of animals and to practice the act of growing food. Before most people were ever initiated into any spiritual system, they said, you need to go and work in the garden. As a way of bringing you down, becoming more humble. Because a humble person is not going to argue. My father said to me, Eugene, don't argue with anyone. The moment the argument starts, you remove yourself because you are the problem. I was like, how can you know that, Dad? I mean, you don't even know what I'm arguing about. He said, but the point is, if you leave the argument ceases to happen, at least with you. And especially if you can go and do something else. Go plant the tree, go plant some seeds, go water the garden. Because what is for sure is that the energy that it takes to sustain this kind of aggression is fed by the same food that can feed the poet, the painter, the musician. So everyone's going to need the food. Everyone's going to need the food. We're all going to need the energy. So what we have done in these areas is we've partnered with churches because churches are the ones that have the land, at least in the South of America, Southeastern America. Churches have these properties inside of low-income neighborhoods. They also have a consistent stream of income because they're collecting tithes, twice a week or however it goes. And the land is typically unused or underused because just as you find in San Francisco, you can always get people to do a lot of things other than work in the soil. People will come to a party, they'll come to argue, they'll come to meet, they'll come to conferences. But the moment you say, hey, we're going to go do this thing, there's not going to be a camera, there's not going to be a microphone, but there's going to be a shovel, and it's going to be a big bright sun above your head, or it might be raining, or it might be cold, people become a lot less interested. They even like to go to the trainings, right? But the actual daily work is a lot less interesting. And so I'm throwing all of these ideas out there because I know you all can connect the dots and make the spider webs in your own mind, but I want us to always remember that as we're sitting here in North America, that the very context that we sit upon is what our brother Antonio talked about, which is how we value land and how we value labor. It's only been in North America where I've been invited to conferences like this or conversations like this where it is predominantly males talking. Because all around the world, it's women who make the food happen. When I was in Kenya, it's Wangari Maathai who was doing all this work. Everybody knows Vandana Shiva. So we have got to understand that even as we move towards this food justice idea or food sovereignty idea, in America, the lens is absolutely skewed in every possible way. In every possible way, and in the most obvious ways around gender and around race. Because it's a very different thing for me to be standing up here in front of you than for Joe to be standing here in front of you. We have a similar heart, but we're living inside of a paradigm that is just totally artificial. So for us to move these conversations forward, the part that I offer is that we start from the ground level. And if there's anything that I can offer as far as techniques and all that, I can talk about that. But most importantly, what's valuable to me is for us to understand that even Prince has a song called Family Name, right? And in the song, he says, you might say what you're mad about, but you still got your family name. Pleased to meet you, Mr. Goldberg. I be John Blackwell just the same, right? He says, you might say what you're mad about, but you still got your family name. Is that making sense to you? My name is Eugene Cook. You think I can trace that anywhere? Can I trace that name anywhere that's going to make sense to me? It's not going to take me anywhere. I met a young woman that I was doing gardening with back in LA, and her name was Linda Bassett. And she told me about her family crest. She showed me her family crest, right? I was like, whoa. She said, oh yeah, the Bassetts, we go back to Great Britain, probably. And I was like, whoa, and it just sat me down to know that this woman can take her name. A woman that I farmed with, there was a young woman in the video named Nicole Blue. She said her cousin just hit her up on Facebook and said, he's in Germany maybe, and found their name on the wall, right? And found out what concentration camps they were in and all this kind of stuff from her name, right? So the reason why I grow food is because other than that, I have no connection to this place. Not by any choice of my own. That connection was completely severed. So I touch the earth every single day just to know that I'm still relevant. So I hear people talking about the things that they're upset about and the forces that they want to challenge and the things they want to break down. And I say, you might say what you're mad about, but you still got your family name. Prince's name is Prince Rogers Nelson. Does that take him anywhere? So you can be all this money, all this fame, and have no power because you have no connection. So the deepest connection we can have is this direct connection with the soil. All the webs and the life forms that you spoke about, that's near and dear to my heart. Because without them, I don't really have any relationship. I've been sitting in this space and been blown away by the level of intelligence and information that is coming from all the speakers. And I'm so grateful to Chema and Nassim for reaching out and making this happen. Because there's so many people bringing so much, and I don't know about any of this. I don't have a permaculture certificate. I don't have a degree in agriculture. I don't know any of that stuff. What I have is that I used to walk in the farm with my grandfather, Frank Patterson. He would shoot water moccasins and herd the ducks, and he would never really talk much because of all the things that were in his mind, his insecurities around how he spoke or what education he did or did not have. The land is the great equalizer. It's the place where that is my sister because she and I have experiences with these insects. That's my brother because he and I both understand that when you smell the rain coming, it's time to get outside and plant. Because if you don't, you miss a great opportunity. You understand what I mean? And in that way, we all become equal. Because in every other way, I'm an outsider in this room. And it's a very common experience for me. It's an experience that I live in every day, like Ralph Ellison's book, The Invisible Man, you know what I mean? Every day I'm an outsider. Even when I'm the expert in the room, I'm an outsider because I know that there's a conversation that we won't have, or there's a conversation that if we do have, has the potential to split us rather than unite us. And I'm doing my best to have that conversation with you and still let you know that we're united. I'm still your brother. I'm still here to make this happen. The people that I feed, that our collective feeds in Atlanta, are people from all over the city, from all types of backgrounds and gender identifications and all types of things, because it's all about us eating the food. So I'll do a bit of basic stuff that I want to share with you that you might want to write down or check in your smartphone, just information things. There is, in the back of this book, there's a list of films. And some of the things that were mentioned yesterday around NAFTA and things like that, I've just been watching films like everybody else, and I think people should know about a couple of them. There's a website called topdocumentaryfilms.com. Anybody know about that one? Good, you do. That's only one person. The website is topdocumentaryfilms.com, and you can go on there and just watch a whole bunch of free documentaries. There's a lot that I would like to suggest, but I want to suggest one right now. The Coconut Revolution. The Coconut Revolution. And it's about an island right outside of Papua New Guinea, where there was a copper mine, and the indigenous people fought the British, got them off of that island, and then got an embargo on them, and had to figure out how to create their own energy, their own food, their own medicine, all of that. And this happened in 2004. Not an ancient history story. So the Coconut Revolution. The other one is Life and Debt. Anyone ever heard of Life and Debt? D-E-B-T, Life and Debt. Life and Debt is the story of what happened in Jamaica after NAFTA. That's a very, very crucial film, Life and Debt. And our brother Ron Finley from South Central Los Angeles. Anybody know about Ron Finley? All right, Ron Finley, you can check his TED Talk, but he just came out with a film called Can You Dig This? And Can You Dig This? We screened it in Georgia like 4 nights ago, and I was on a panel, and it's a very, very important film because it shows the context of people of color in urban areas doing agriculture. And that's something that we don't hardly ever see. I'm about to close. There's a film called Growing Cities. Anybody ever see this film called Growing Cities? I haven't seen it either, but the reason why I bring it up is because the 2 young men that made the film, two young European males traveled around the country looking at urban farms. And they came to one of the urban farms that I helped design and create called Truly Living Well Center for Natural Urban Agriculture. And they came and said, hey man, we've been traveling, this is about 4 years ago, we've been traveling all over the all over the state. We heard about how amazing this farm is. This is a 4-acre farm in the middle of downtown Atlanta. It's amazing. And they came and were like, yo, we just want to do an interview, we want to do the film, da-da-da-da. So they did the interview, they did this film, and they sent me an email saying that they were getting ready to screen the film. And I went on their website and typed in, growingcitiesthefilm.com. And the first splash page of their film says, grow where you are. I was like, well, this is interesting. It's the name of my business. It's the name of my book. Oh, so I sent them an email and was like, hey, you're using my slogan. Yeah, we hope you don't mind. I was like, okay, cool. All right. I mean, I believe in the slogan anyway, so I took that. My wife was really, really upset because this happens to me regularly and I never fight. Because it's like, what's the fight? But the point is, they screened the film. I was like, all right, well, cool, send me a copy. And they never sent me a copy. Right? Never sent me a copy. So if you see the film, I'm in it, I've heard. And people have told me they've seen the film. And they've, I saw you in this film, I saw you in this film. I'm like, okay, cool. But the point is that those types of films have continually been made over the last 4 or 5 years. Films about the urban ag movement. And they're always from a very specific lens. And so when Ron Finley made this film, it's a very different lens. So that we can broaden the conversation of how important it is for the people who find themselves trapped in cities doing agriculture. That's very different than wanting to stay in a city and do urban agriculture. Do you understand the difference? If you find yourself trapped in a city and you start doing agriculture and it's just part of the whole litany of stresses in your life that you got to maintain, It's different than I'm trying to stay in this city and do agriculture. So I'm going to approach the powers that be to figure out how I can get my piece of the pie. I'm doing agriculture in a city because I find myself in cities, because I have not yet figured out how to earn the capital to gain access to land outside of the city, based on the things that the terms that you're using, like institutional racism. It's a serious term, and it can come out pretty easily. It's different to put those shoes on every day and stand in front of people and work alongside of people who understand institutional racism as a concept, but at the same time are able to save up money and go buy land, or are just able to walk over to some land that their parents have had for years and years and years. Last piece. There was a volunteer of mine, and she was learning how to farm, a young white woman named Natalie. And it was coming time for like winter break or something like that. She didn't really know too much about farming, but she was really excited about learning how to do urban agriculture. And we were talking about, this winter break. And I said, what are you going to do? She said, I'm going to go to my grandmother's farm, my grandmother's land. I said, oh yeah, how much land does your grandmother have? She says, my grandmother has 400 acres in, I think it was in Tennessee. I was like, wow. I was like, okay. I said, how did she get it? She was like, what do you mean? It's been in my family for years. I said, okay. I said, where's your family from? What's your background? She said, oh, we're French. I said, okay.
I guess it's not going well.
It's just going.